Hello, this is part 1 of my analysis of every relevant move in competitive GSC. In this series, I will be covering every move with at least some use in the game. When covering a move, I'll put its information on screen, and then show replays featuring the move. I'll go over what the move does, who uses it and why, and highlight any interesting notes, trivia, or history. If a move is not used by anything relevant, it won't be covered. Some moves that are clones of other moves, like how Morning Sun and Moonlight are basically the same move, will be covered at the same time. I'll be covering Smogon formats. If you need information on Smogon tiers or explanations of what competitive Pokemon jargon means, check out the description. I'll have a pinned comment with timestamps for every move in this video, if you want to skip around. Moves will be covered in alphabetical order. We will be starting part 1 off with Acid Armor, and ending part 2 off with Zap Cannon. If you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Alright, let's get into the thick of it. Acid Armor is a solid move that very few Pokemon happen to learn. Acid Armor raises your defense by 2 and has a staggering 61 PP. The most famous user of Acid Armor is Vaporeon in OU. Acid Armor greatly improves Vaporeon's matchup against physical attackers like Snorlax, and makes Vaporeon better at tanking Explosion from Pokemon like Cloyster. Magcargo in PU can also use Acid Armor. With Acid Armor, Magcargo can stall out physical boosters like Noctowl. Curse is often preferred because it also boosts Magcargo's attack, but Acid Armor has way more PP than Curse, so there is still a niche for it. Aeroblast is the signature move of Lugia. In Ubers, Lugia makes good use of Aeroblast on its Curse sets. Curse lets Lugia power up its Aeroblast, making up for Lugia's average attack stat. Aeroblast's higher than normal critical hit chance is valuable, given the prominence of physical defense boosters like Barrier Mewtwo and Curse Snorlax. Aeroblast also happens to be one of Lugia's biggest problems though. Aeroblast only has 8 PP, and there are several prominent flying resistant Pokemon in Ubers. Lugia has to be very careful using up one of its only 8 Aeroblasts, and the move is prone to being stalled out by good pivoting with flying resistant Pokemon like Golem, Zapdos, or Tyranitar. In GSC, Agility isn't really used without Baton Pass on the same set. The only exceptions are certain Sword Stance plus Agility users in lower tiers, like Seaking in PU. Agility is one of the best moves to Baton Pass though. Several Pokemon are seen passing Agility to their teammates with Baton Pass. You have Jolteon and Scizor and Smeargle in OU, Ledyon and Farfetch'd in NU, Ariados in PU, and even more. You used to have Girafarig and Scyther passing Agility in UU, but then Agility and Baton Pass were banned from being used on the same set because of how obnoxious the combination was. Certain sweepers, like Marowak in OU, Cubone in NU, and formerly Bellydrum Quagsire in UU, became lethal when they received an Agility. Agility also just helps for full pass strategies. Having extra speed is always good to have. Amnesia is a very rare move in competitive GSC. It boosts your special defense by 2 and has pretty good PP. The most famous user of Amnesia in GSC is probably Girafarig in UU. Girafarig learns Baton Pass and Amnesia, so it can pass boosted special defense to a teammate. This can be used to enable sweepers like Growth Politoed. Aside from that, Amnesia is only really a gimmicky, in theory kind of move. In theory, you could use Amnesia on Kingler in NU to patch up your poor special defense, but this set isn't that reliable. Ancient Power is a rather infamous high-risk, high-reward move. Ancient Power only has 60 base power and a meager 8 PP. But it also has a 10% chance to raise every one of a Pokemon's stats by 1. This move has the potential to spiral out of control. In OU, Tyranitar or even Marowak can run the move as a high risk, high reward option, posing a huge threat if they do indeed get that boost. In UU, Kabutops uses Ancient Power as its main stab move. Quagsire can also use Ancient Power on its Rest plus Sleep Talk sets to threaten Scyther and Fish for a boost. Aerodactyl and Omastar have also experimented with the move in the past, though Omastar wouldn't run it these days. Pupitar and NU can also run Ancient Power in its last move slot. Pupitar's last move slot tends to be quite free, so a move with a 10% chance to raise all of Pupitar's stats isn't out of the question. Attract is another rather infamous high risk, high reward move. Attract is the kind of move to show up every once in a while on some random Pokemon and be annoying. Because genders are decided by DVs in GSC, almost every single Pokemon you see will be a male. This is because, to become a female Pokemon, you have to lower your attack stat. Special attackers who don't care about having a lower attack stat can abuse this with Attract. When a Pokemon is inflicted with Attract, it has a 50% chance to be, overwhelmed by love and fail to use its move. This is pretty similar to how Confusion moves work, but Attract, unlike Confusion, is in effect until the Pokemon switches out. It never runs out. Various Pokemon have made use of Attract. The most famous is probably OU Alakazam. The move has its flaws though. The opposing Pokemon can just break through Attract, and Attract doesn't work against genderless Pokemon, aka legendaries like Zapdos or Raikou. Barrier is a very important move in the strongest GSC tier. In GSC UUBRs, Barrier is a staple move on Mewtwo. Barrier Mewtwo is a polarizing and centralizing force in GSC UUBRs. The combination of Barrier and Recover let Mewtwo wrestle with several strong Pokemon, including Snorlax and Mew. Barrier Mewtwo with moves like Toxic and Flamethrower is a common sight on defensive teams. On teams that pair Mewtwo with Growth plus Baton Pass Jolteon, Barrier Mewtwo can use moves like Psychic and Ice Beam to devastating effect if you pass Growth to it. Barrier's 48 PP also make it a very effective tool for PP stalling the opponents. Barrier Mewtwo shapes and defines GSC UUBRs, and if a Pokemon matches up poorly against Barrier Mewtwo, its viability is overall greatly affected. Aside from UUBR's Mewtwo, Barrier isn't seeing all that much. Most of the other Pokemon who learn it can't make good use out of it, and not that many Pokemon learn the move in the first place. The only other users of it would be Baton Pass users, of course, those being Mr. Mime in UU and Ledyon in NU. Baton Pass is among the most dangerous moves in competitive GSC. If you have a stat boost like Swords Dance and then use Baton Pass, that boost is passed to the Pokemon you switch in. Baton Pass has incredible potential. I already covered how Agility, Barrier and Amnesia pair with Baton Pass, and they aren't all. Growth plus Baton Pass is a deadly combination available on the 5 evolutions. Vaporeon, Jolteon and Espeon make good use of this combination, as does Flareon in NU. Growth past Jolteon is particularly effective in UUBRs. Mewtwo is just disgusting when you pass Growth to it. Swords Dance is another great move to Baton Pass. This combination is used on Scizor in OU, Scyther in UU, and Farfetch'd in NU. Curse is a move rarely passed alongside Baton Pass. Baton Pass users generally have better moves to Baton Pass out. On PU Venomoth though, Curse plus Baton Pass is a strong combination, being used to enable deadly Pokemon like Hitmontop. Substitute might seem like an appealing move to Baton Pass, but most Baton Pass users can't fit it. Finally, there is Mean Look or Spiderweb passing. Only 4 Pokemon in the game can Baton Pass Mean Look or Spiderweb, but the combination has still been banned outright in both OU and PU. In later generations, there's also dry passing, where you use Baton pass as a momentum tool as opposed to passing boosts, but there's nothing in GSC except maybe UU Mr. Mime that can make effective use out of this. Belly Drum is another high risk, high reward move. Belly Drum boosts your attack to +6 at the cost of lowering your HP by 50%. In GSC, if you use Belly Drum below 50%, you don't lose any HP and you actually gain +2 attack. It's basically like using Sword Stance. Belly Drum users can be used on offensive teams as powerful high risk, high reward options, or on defensive teams as win conditions. Belly Drum is an option on the most powerful Pokemon in the game, Snorlax. Drum Snorlax can tear through teams if used effectively, though this set has declined as GSC OU has gotten more fast paced. Charizard and Quagsire have also used Belly Drum in OU. The former is the fastest Belly Drum user in the game, while the latter has an amazing typing. In UU, Quagsire is still an effective Belly Drum user. Belly Drum Politoed also used to see some play, but this set has mostly fallen out of favour. Belly Drum isn't as great below UU, due to the faster pace of the tiers below UU. There is still PU Poliwhirl though, who combines Belly Drum with Lovely Kiss to dangerous effect. With Thunder being so widely used over Thunderbolt, you might wonder if Blizzard is used over Ice Beam. This isn't the case though. Blizzard is almost never used in GSC. Simply put, nothing in the game really needs the extra damage provided by Blizzard when compared to Ice Beam. Blizzard only has APP, and that's bad because of how you want to be spamming your Ice move because of how deadly Freeze is. Every Pokemon that learns Blizzard is better off using Ice Beam. The only time I've ever seen Blizzard used was a gimmicky Jinx set in OU that used Never Melt Ice, but again, that's a gimmicky set. Body Slam may not be as powerful a normal type attack as Return or Double Edge, but its 30% chance to paralyze the foe make it a very annoying move. Body Slam is a favourite of bulky Curse Sweepers like Snorlax in OU and Ubers, Hypno in UU, and Wigglytuff in NU. Body Slam makes these Pokemon more annoying to counter because switch-ins have to risk tanking paralysis. It makes these Pokemon more difficult to counter. For example, Curse Hypno in UU could be dealt with by Screech users like Gligar or Feraligatr, but these Pokemon despise paralysis, so they aren't really good checks at all. There are also more defensive Pokemon that use Body Slam, such as Miltank in OU or Hitmonlee in NU. Body Slam lets these Pokemon support their teammates with paralysis, and it just makes them more annoying to switch into. Charm is a pretty important move on Umbreon in GSC OU. Charm lowers the opposing Pokemon's attack by 2 stages. The ability to lower attack by 2 is very useful when going up against Cursed Snorlax, who Umbreon can actually stall out with Charm. Charm is also helpful against physical attackers like Rhydon, and lets Umbreon better survive explosion from Pokemon like Exeggutor and Gengar. Outside of Umbreon, Charm isn't really used on anything serious, though it could be explored more on Pokemon in the lower tiers. Confuse Ray is a move generally passed over by the Pokemon who learn it. Most Pokemon have a tough time fitting the move, or it just isn't useful on them. Certain OU Pokemon can make Confuse Ray work though. Confuse Ray pairs well with Perish Song plus Meanlook, since a Pokemon loses one of their Perish Song turns if they hit themselves. Confuse Ray and Swagger are unfortunately pretty common strategies on the OU ladder. Another prominent user of Confuse Ray would be Xatu in NU. Xatu's Thief set basically has an open last move slot, so in modern times, it often runs Confuse Ray just as a way to hack through its checks. Counter is a potentially devastating move in GSC, seeing more usage than one might expect. If you hit something with a physical move on the turn it uses counter, the counter user deals double the damage you did back to them. In OU, Jinx can use counter as a way to surprise KO opposing Snorlax. Nidoking can also use the move to snipe unsuspecting Zapdos. In GSC, counter works against all hidden power types, physical or special, so Nidoking can counter hidden power ice or hidden power water. Blissey is an effective counter user because of its gargantuan HP stat, meaning counter can deal huge damage even if hit by a weak physical attack. Chansey in UU is similarly effective at using counter. It can use counter on curse sets to help win curse wars. Other Pokemon that have experimented with counter include OU Rhydon, Gligar in UU and OU, and UU Mr. Mime. An important mechanic to know with counter is that it doesn't work against moves pulled by Sleep Talk. For example, if a Snorlax pulls Double Edge from Sleep Talk as Nidoking uses counter, Nidoking's counter will not work. Cross Chop is the best fighting move in GSC. Cross Chop has high base power and a higher chance of inflicting a critical hit on the opponent. Cross Chop is OU Machamp's fighting move of choice. The higher chance to crit can really come in handy against Pokemon like Curse Skarmory. Cross Chop is also the fighting move used by NU Primeape and PU Machoke. Cross Chop is also a good coverage move too. UU Electabuzz and NU Magmar use it to hit normal, and in the case of NU Magmar, rock types too. The higher chance to crit can really put pressure on the opponent. Crunch is the strongest dark type attack in GSC, being used both as a stab attack and coverage. Crunch is 80 base power and has a 20% chance to lower the opponent's special defense. Tyranitar and Houndoom make use of the move, though Tyranitar doesn't always use it because other moves can offer more. Raikou can use Crunch both in OU and Ubers. Crunch gives Raikou better odds of pulling good Sleep Talks against Pokemon like Jinx, Exeggutor and Gengar, and the 20% chance to lower special defense can let Raikou beat opposing Raikou. Crunch is more popular in Ubers because of new Pokemon like Mewtwo and Celebi. Arcanine uses Crunch in UU to hit Slowbro mainly. People used to use Crunch on Feraligatr too, before it was realised that Screech is generally better. Curse is one of the most common, defining and important moves in competitive GSC. If a non-ghost type Pokemon uses Curse, they gain +1 attack and +1 defense, while their speed is lowered by 1. Needless to say, Curse is a very powerful boosting move. Curse is also learned by nearly every Pokemon in the game, further increasing its prominence. This sets it apart from other boosting moves like Swords Dance, who far fewer Pokemon learn. Curse is both an offensive and defensive tool. The most famous user of Curse is the best Pokemon in the game, Snorlax. It feels like Curse was made for Snorlax. It makes it even stronger, patches up its physical defense, and the speed doesn't matter because Snorlax is so naturally slow. Curse Snorlax, whether it's using Earthquake, Flamethrower or Sleep Talk, is the Pokemon to beat in GSCOU. Some Pokemon use Curse differently. Pokemon like Skarmory use Curse primarily as a defensive tool. Curse is Skarmory's best defense boosting move, something Skarmory needs to have the best matchup against the last Pokemon Snorlax. Offensively, Curse can let Skarmory act as a win condition if its counters are removed. Pokemon like Machamp, Rhydon and Tyranitar use Curse because it's just their best means of boosting physical attack. Machamp gets Meditate, but it prefers Curse because Curse means it takes less from physical attacks. Curse also turns Heracross and Lugia into deadly win conditions once their counters are removed. Curse also improves their ability to take physical hits. Some Pokemon use Curse to circumvent how passive they otherwise are. In UU, Hypno tends to stalemate Pokemon like Blastoise, Slowbro, and opposing Hypno with its basic Rest Talk set. With Curse, it can set up on and overpower these Pokemon. No matter where you go in GSC, there's bound to be multiple prominent users of Curse. It is a versatile, dangerous, and dominant setup move. Also, if a Ghost type happens to use Curse, they sacrifice 50% of their HP to deal 25% of the opposing Pokemon's HP every turn. This is far less useful than the other form of Curse, though it's doubtful any of the ghost types would use Curse if it worked the normal way. Defense Curl is a niche move in competitive GSC. All Defense Curl does is raise your defense by 1, so it might seem like an inferior curse. Defense Curl, however, has 61 PP, an incredible amount. This leads some defensive Pokemon to prefer it. The most famous user of Defense Curl is Shuckle. Shuckle tends to cause very long games, so having a move with as much PP as Defense Curl is very useful. You can just burn through Defense Curl in PP wars. You still want to use a defense boosting move on Shuckle to truly wall curse users, so Defense Curl also fits that niche. Fortress in OU can also use Defense Curl, and it prefers it over Curse for the same reasons as Shuckle. Destiny Bond is a very cool move that is unfortunately learned by a mere 8 Pokemon. If a Pokemon KOs another Pokemon as that Pokemon uses Destiny Bond, the Pokemon who KO'd also faints. This can be useful for stopping a dangerous sweeper from running your team over. Destiny Bond can be like a safer alternative to Explosion on Gengar or Haunter, who are the move's most notable users. Gengar can pair Destiny Bond with Mean Look to really ensure certain Pokemon are forced to KO themselves. Mischievous can also use Destiny Bond as a way to stop Pokemon like Curse Snorlax or Machamp. Smeargle is an effective Destiny Bond user because of how frail it is. Slower Pokemon would have to think twice about KOing it because of Destiny Bond. Double Edge is one of the 3 big normal type attacks in GSC, alongside Body Slam and Return. It is the most powerful of the 3, but it lacks Body Slam's ability to paralyze, and using it causes recoil damage. The recoil does annoy some Pokemon less than others. Snorlax uses Double Edge most often as its stab attack. The recoil doesn't affect Snorlax as much because of how high its HP stat is. Snorlax often uses Double Edge on curse sets just for the sheer power. It also requires Double Edge on Rest plus Sleep Talk sets without curse to actually threaten Pokemon like Zapdos. Double Edge is an especially common sight in NU. That tier has a lot of normal types, and a lot of them love spamming Double Edge. Some non-normal types also use Double Edge. Gyarados in UU uses it just as a strong physical attack, which can hit checks like Ampharos and Hypno. Scyther also frequently uses Double Edge to 2-hit KO Pokemon like Gyarados after using Sword Stance. Dragon Breath is a very rarely seen move. Sitting at 60 base power, Dragon Breath isn't a very strong move, and only 4 Pokemon get stab on it. That 30% chance to paralyze is rather appealing though. Kingdra can use Dragon Breath on Rest plus Sleep Talk sets as a way to paralyze opponents, increasing its utility and letting it support teammates. Steelix, of all things, has also used Dragon Breath. Dragon Breath is so weak on Steelix that Pokemon like Zapdos or Skarmory end up back at 100% from leftovers after being hit by Dragon Breath. Them being stuck at 100% means they can't use Rest, and they're stuck being paralyzed. Aerodactyl in UU can also use Dragon Breath for a similar reason. The paralysis can be very useful. Drill Peck is the most consistently good flying type attack in the game. There really isn't much to say about this one. Skarmory, Dodrio, Fearow and Murkrow use it cause it's their best stab attack. Zapdos and Xatu learn it, but they don't use it very often because other moves they use can accomplish a lot of what Drill Peck does, especially in Xatu's case. Dynamic Punch is one of the more infamous moves in competitive GSC. Dynamic Punch has 100 base power and a 100% chance to confuse the opponent. However, it has an appalling 50% accuracy. When you use Dynamic Punch, it's a coin toss if you will deal damage. The most infamous user of Dynamic Punch is OU Gengar, who really wants to use the move to hit Pokemon like Tyranitar, but it hates dealing with that accuracy. The prominence of Dynamic Punch on Gengar and how unreliable it can be has been a source of criticism towards GSC OU. Other users of Dynamic Punch include Uber's Mewtwo as well as Mixed Tyranitar and Dragonite in OU. These Pokemon really appreciate a strong fighting move to hit Pokemon like Snorlax and Tyranitar, and the added confusion can be very annoying to deal with. Earthquake is one of the best and most prominent moves in competitive GSC. When you look at the best attacking move of a type, the strongest usually comes with a drawback. See the lowered accuracy of Thunder, Blizzard or Megahorn. The next best option tends to be something in the 80 to 90 base power range. Earthquake is 100 base power and doesn't have any drawbacks. Every single ground type in GSC runs Earthquake, not a single one ever goes without it. Earthquake is a very common coverage move too. Earthquake is particularly useful on normal types, as it lets them deal with rock types, steel types or ghost types, who could otherwise handle their normal type attacks. Earthquake hits 5 typings super effectively, and some of the Pokemon of those typings, like Electric and Poison, tend to be common and annoying in several GSC tiers. Earthquake tends to be the best physical attacking move for Pokemon without physical stab. Examples include Sword Stance Meganium in OU, Screech for Alligator in UU, and Belly Drum Charizard, Politoed or Poliwhirl. Nearly every Pokemon that learns Earthquake can use it in some way, ground type or not. Encore is a very useful utility move that's unfortunately given limited distribution. When you use Encore, you lock the opponent into the move they just used for 3 to 6 turns. Not every move can be encored. I've seen many people over the years try to Encore Sleep Talk. Don't do it, Encore will fail. Encore can be used for a variety of things. You can lock a Pokemon that just use a non-damaging move, like Rest or a setup move, neutering them for several turns. Encore is good at forcing Pokemon to switch out. Some Pokemon use Encore to stop certain setup sweepers from abusing them, like NU Dugong or Shuckle. OU Alakazam frequently uses Encore. Encore is especially good on Alakazam because it can heal itself with Recover. UU Kadabra also has the Encore plus Recover combination, which it can use to annoy Pokemon like Pinsir. Jumpluff, because of its high speed, can use Encore to check some of the most dangerous Pokemon in UU, like Scyther and Pinsir. Explosion is the best offensive move in GSC, and a hallmark of the game's competitive scene. Explosion, at 250 base power, already has the highest immediate base power of any move in the game. In GSC though, Explosion also happens to halve the defense of the opposing Pokemon when used. Needless to say, Explosion does an incredible amount of damage. Pokemon with an already high or even just respectable attack stat like Mew, Golem, Cloyster, Exeggutor or Forretress one-hit KO almost everything with Explosion, unless the opposing Pokemon resists it. Even Pokemon with lower attack stats like Gengar, Electrode or Haunter deal a lot of damage with the move. Explosion plays a major role in GSC tiers, especially in OU and Ubers. In OU, the move is an integral part of offensive teams, and a major asset when trying to break down stall teams and the tankiest Pokemon in OU. Explosion is a big part of GSC OU's identity as such a skill-intensive tier. Yeah, Explosion is very powerful, but it comes with risks. Explosion also KOs the Pokemon that uses it, and it can be neutered by Rock, Steel, and especially Ghost types. Figuring out how to pilot Explosion and when to use the move is key if you want to become a better GSC OU player. Several of OU's Explosion users, like Golem, Cloyster, Steelix, and Forretress also play a big role in Ubers. Ubers also adds Mew, who can power up its Explosion with Sword Stance. After a Sword Stance, Mew's Explosion cleaves through even Rock and Steel types. Explosion Mew is a very effective trading Pokemon, especially when used as a lead. Lead Mew with Explosion and Miracle Berry is a very big deal in the modern Ubers landscape. In lower tiers, Explosion is less common, as most of the good users of it are taken by the higher tiers. The only super common Explosion user in UU is Haunter. Electrode and Muck also exist, but they are more specialized and far less common. Haunter and Electrode also don't have super strong explosions. In NU, Pineco and Weezing, arguably the two best Pokemon in that tier, use Explosion. There's also Graveler and more rarely Execute. Explosion certainly plays a bigger role in NU than in UU. Explosion, Weezing and Pineco are used to break holes in teams and stop dangerous setup sweepers. Explosion, especially on faster Pokemon, can be used to combat setup sweepers, further increasing its utility. All in all, Explosion is probably a top 3 move in competitive GSC, and a key part of the generation's identity. Fire Blast is the most powerful fire type attack in the game power wise. However, it only has APP and has a 15% chance to miss. Fire Blast is still often preferred over Flamethrower though. Fire Blast tends to work better on offensive Pokemon with less longevity, while Flamethrower is preferred on more defensive Pokemon with the intention of sticking around. The higher immediate damage can be crucial and help ensure certain 3-hit KOs become 2-hit KOs. The BL fire types that show up in OU, like Moltres, Charizard, Houndoom, and even Entei and Typhlosion, all use Fire Blast more, as do various mixed offensive sets on OU, Ubers, NU, and UU Pokemon, like Mewtwo, Tyranitar, Nidoqueen, and Flareon. Golem used to frequently run Fire Blast before Roar was discovered on it, and Fire Blast is still a usable option on it today. As I mentioned with Fire Blast, Flamethrower tends to be preferred on Pokemon that want to stick around. You see this with Pokemon like Blissey, Ho-Oh, Rest Snorlax, more defensive Mewtwo sets, the Slow Twins in UU, and Ninetales. Flamethrower has more PP than Fire Blast, so it has more opportunities to inflict a burn, a possibly devastating occurrence. Flamethrower is great alongside Toxic, because Flamethrower threatens the steel types that would take nothing from Toxic. Uber's Ho-Oh uses this combination very well. The higher PP and overall more consistent nature of the move is what makes it better in longer games. Fire Punch is a strictly worse move than Flamethrower. However, some Pokemon that don't learn Flamethrower happen to learn Fire Punch, so the move does exist. There's not much to say about Fire Punch. Alakazam uses it because it hits psychic resistant Pokemon like Skarmory, Forretress, Jinx, and Exeggutor. Gengar can sometimes use it to hit certain Pokemon harder, but it generally gets more from other moves. Ampharos and Electabuzz in UU use Fire Punch to hit Pokemon like Podoswine, Magneton, and Blossom. Ampharos can also try burn Nidoqueen with Fire Punch, crippling it. Both Return and Frustration are basically the same move, so I'm just gonna cover both of them at the same time. Returnstration sits in the middle of Body Slam and Double Edge. It can paralyze, but it's stronger than Body Slam while lacking the recoil of Double Edge. It also has the most PP of the 3 moves, and is learned by the most Pokemon. Some normal types, like Granbull or Statler, don't get Body Slam or Double Edge, so they settle with Return. There are situations where Returnstration is the best option. For example, on Belly Jump Snorlax, it wants the higher power, but it doesn't want the recoil of Double Edge, so it often uses Return. The same basic principle applies to other setup sweepers, like Curse Porygon 2 and Sword Stance Pinsir and Kingler. It really just depends on the Pokemon. Giga Drain is much worse in GSC than it is in later generations. Giga Drain is only 60 base power and has a meager 8 PP. Giga Drain also fails if used against Substitute. Most grass types prefer other grass moves, like Razor Leaf or Hidden Power Grass. Giga Drain does show up sometimes though. Exeggutor doesn't get Razor Leaf and often wants to use a different hidden power types, so it uses Giga Drain fairly often. Giga Drain can be a useful coverage move too. Fortress has used the move to threaten Cloyster, Golem and Rhydon. Its son Pineco has also used Giga Drain in NU to hit Graveler. The fact that Giga Drain restores HP can help these Pokemon out. We all know what Growl does. It's an early game move that lowers the opponent's attack by 1. Surprisingly, this move does have some use. The most famous user of Growl would be OU Miltank. With Growl and its 61 PP, Miltank can actually stall out Curse Snorlax with Growl. It can also use Growl to combat Nidoking, Curse Tyranitar, and Explosion users. Growl is more of a staple on Miltank than Body Slam is. Mischievous has also experimented with Growl. It has a lot of PP and it can help combat certain curse users, so it finds a place on Mischievous. Outside of those two, Growl isn't really seen. It's just a hyper niche move that one noob terrorizing cow happens to get use out of. Also, sometimes people happen to put Growl on a set by accident when trying to put the next move to be covered on. Growth plays an important role in competitive GSC. Growth is the only special attack boosting move in the game, aside from the unreliable Ancient Power. Growth enables some Pokemon to become very dangerous. The most famous Growthers would be the Evolutions. In OU, Jolteon and Espeon can become deadly sweepers using Growth, threatening much of the OU cast. These two can also Baton pass their Growth to teammates like Zapdos. Growth Jolteon also plays a major role in Ubers, especially, again, with Baton Pass. Vaporeon and UU Politoed are different kinds of Growth users. They are much slower than Jolteon and Espeon, but they are much tankier, letting them act as bulky sweepers. NU Flareon is able to boost up and Baton Pass Growth, while Sunflora and Tangela in PU use the move as a way to circumvent their passivity. Haze is a rather useful defensive option. Haze eliminates all stat buffs and debuffs on both sides when used. This is great to have when going up against any setup or stat boosting Pokemon. A lot of Pokemon that learn Haze do struggle to fit it onto their sets though. It's not as big a deal as you might think it is. OU Dragonite uses Haze on its Rest plus Sleep Talk sets to combat various Sword Stance, Curse, or even Belly Drum users. Likewise, UU Crobat uses it to better combat Sword Stance Scyther, Pinsir, and Belly Drum Quagsire. UU Quillfish can use Haze as an emergency tool against Baton Pass and other set-up Pokemon, but it generally prefers to use Curse. Quagsire and Ubers and even OU sometimes also uses Haze to combat Pokemon like Growth Jolteon. Heal Bell is an incredible move with an incredibly limited distribution. Heal Bell rids all of your teammates of any status inflictions they have. This move has a wide variety of uses. A common strategy is to pair a rest using setup sweeper like Belly Drum Snorlax or Quagsire or a Sword Stance Marowak with Heal Bell and waking them up whenever they fall asleep. You can also just rid your team of any inflicted status like Paralysis, Burn, Sleep, Poison, or even Freeze. It's a fantastic move to have on defensive teams, especially when you look at who learns it. Every Heal Bell user but Granbull also has a one-turn recovery move. Uber Celebi and OU Miltank don't go without it, it just provides too much utility. Blissey, as well as UU Chansey, also commonly use the move, though it's not as big a staple on them. Heal Bell is a nice option on UU Granbull too. Granbull is certainly more offensively threatening than other Heal Bell users, so it's often preferred over Chansey these days on those spikeless teams that really want Heal Bell. Hidden Power is a very important and valuable move in competitive GSC. Hidden Power 70 base power isn't that impressive, but by changing your Pokemon's HP, attack or defense DVs around, you can change what typing Hidden Power will be. Hidden Power is also learned by basically every Pokemon in the game, just like other universal TM moves like Rest or Protect. Every Pokemon in GSC is able to use a 70 base power coverage move of any type they want. The implications of this are enormous. Are you a Pokemon lacking a coverage move for a specific type? No problem, just use Hidden Power X, Y, or Z. Hidden Power is one of the most widely used moves in GSC, though some Hidden Power types are clearly more popular than others are. Some Hidden Power types, like Steel, Dragon, or Poison, are basically never used. The stat changes required to use different Hidden Power types should also be noted. Some of them, like Hidden Power Ice or Hidden Power Bug, have a very small effect on a Pokemon's stats. Others, like Hidden Power Grass or Hidden Power Fire, have a significant effect on a Pokemon's HP stat, reducing their HP by over 20 points. Pokemon can make use of Hidden Power in several ways. It's more often than not used as a coverage move. Probably the most famous group of Pokemon to benefit from Hidden Power would be electric types like Zapdos, Magneton, Ampharos, or Jolteon. Hidden Power is a godsend on these Pokemon because, with Hidden Power Ice, Water, or even Grass, they now have a way to threaten ground types. Zapdos would probably be a much less dominant Pokemon in OU if it wasn't for Hidden Power. That's just one example though. Look through all the Pokemon in GSC and witness how many of them use Hidden Power because it gives them valuable coverage they otherwise lack. Hidden Power Bug Marowak and Machamp, Hidden Power Fire Fortress, Hidden Power Water Espeon or Gengar, Hidden Power Ground Scyther, Pinsir and Granbull, and so many more. There's also several Pokemon who use Hidden Power as their stab move. You see this with Pokemon with limited offensive move pools. It's a phenomenon much more common in the lower tiers. Examples of this would be Hidden Power Rock Aerodactyl, Hidden Power Grass Celebi, Hidden Power Flying Gyarados and Dragonite, Hidden Power Bug Scizor, Scyther and Pinsir, and several more. Some Hidden Power types are more popular in certain tiers than others. Hidden Power Ground is a prominent move in UU that few Pokemon get use out of in OU. Probably the most universally common Hidden Power is Ice. Ice just tends to be a great coverage typing. Overall, Hidden Power has a massive impact on the competitive GSC scene. The game would look quite different if Hidden Power didn't exist. High Jump Kick isn't just a fighting move used by Hitmonlee, it is also used by Hitmonchan and Hitmontop. High Jump Kick is better than most of the other junk fighting moves, but only 4 Pokemon learn it, and they all really just use it as a basic stab attack. If you miss High Jump Kick, you don't lose half your HP. Instead, you take 1/8 of the damage you would have dealt. There really isn't much to say about this move. Moving on. Hydro Pump is basically just water type Fire Blast. It's 120 base power, but only has APP and 80% accuracy. Overall, the majority of the Pokemon who learn Surf and Hydro Pump prefer Surf because it's more consistent. Hydro Pump is only used if a Pokemon needs to hit certain damage ranges. You see this with water types that don't have a naturally high special attack stat, like with Gyarados, Quillfish, or Sword Stance Tentacruel. Some Pokemon don't need the extra power of Hydro Pump, but they can still run the move sometimes. OU Vaporeon generally uses Surf, but it can use Hydro Pump to have surprise extra damage. Hyper Beam is a very uncommon move in GSC. Hyper Beam is, for the most part, a gimmick, a very high risk, high reward move. Hyper Beam has insane damage potential, but the recharge turn kills its viability. Your Pokemon is extremely vulnerable during that recharge turn, especially if they KO the opposing Pokemon. Your opponent can bring in something that can KO you, or they can set up for free. Giving the opponent free turns is never a smart idea. Nevertheless, some players have explored Hyper Beam as a pseudo-explosion or self-destruct. It's a pseudo-explosion because your Pokemon is likely to be KO'd in the name of damage. Scyther and Kingler have experimented with Sword Stance plus Hyper Beam sets as nuke options. Ursaring has used Hyper Beam on its curse sets for a similar reason. It can be a nice nuke option. The most famous user of Hyper Beam is Belly Drum Charizard, who can use it alongside Pinkbo to OHKO Snorlax, Vaporeon, and possibly even Suicune after setting up. This is in no way reliable, but it sure is cool. Hypnosis is a high risk, high reward move. Sleep is a great status to inflict in GSC, but Hypnosis only has 60% accuracy. Some Pokemon that learn Hypnosis, like Exeggutor, also learn better sleep moves like Sleep Powder. Gengar and Misdreavus in OU can both use Hypnosis to shut down non-rest using Pokemon. Gengar uses it more than Misdreavus does because it fits its playstyle better. Landing Hypnosis on something like Tyranitar or Snorlax can be game changing. Its son Haunter can also use Hypnosis in UU on very offensive teams. A big user of Hypnosis is NU Persian. Hypnosis Persian is one of the most popular leads in NU, and a pretty big deal in the metagame, leading the charge of offensive teams with its disruptive tactics. Certain Pokemon, like UU Mr. Mime and NU Rapidash, used to use Hypnosis before people realised there's just better options on them. Ice Beam is one of the most popular offensive moves in the game. Ice Beam is far more common as a coverage move than a stab move. There's only a limited amount of ice types in the game. Ice is just a very good typing to have offensively. Ice hits 4 typing super effectively, and there tends to be many flying and ground types that you hit super effectively. Ice Beam also has a 10% chance to freeze non-ice type Pokemon, and freeze is the most overpowered status in GSC. A frozen Pokemon only has a 10% chance to thaw out, and they need to spend a turn thawing out. There are many users of Ice Beam, probably too many to name. It's not a complicated move, but it's very consistently useful. One of the most dangerous moves to spam too, given its freeze chance. Ice Punch is the same deal as Fire Punch. It is strictly outclassed by another move, Ice Beam in this case, but some Pokemon don't get Ice Beam and have to settle with this move. The biggest example of this is OU Gengar, who almost never goes without Ice Punch. Other examples would be OU Alakazam or UU Electabuzz. I already went over why Ice Beam is so good, so let's just move on. Iron Tail is a very uncommon move in GSC. There's really just one Pokemon that occasionally brings it. Steel isn't a great typing offensively, and Iron Tail misses a quarter of the time. Most Pokemon either don't need to use Iron Tail, or they get more from other moves. The one big user of it is sometimes Steelix in OU and Ubers. Iron Tail, unlike Steelix's other stab move Earthquake, hits everything. Earthquake can't hit flying types. This gives it a spot on Steelix's rare Curse rest sets. Also helps that Iron Tail can lower defense. Aside from that, Iron Tail is almost never seen. Steelix's Iron Tail sets are very rarely used anyway. They have their own flaws. Leech Seed is not as good as it is in later generations. This is because of the mechanics behind the move. Leech Seed only affects an inflicted Pokemon after they use a move. If you Leech Seed a Pokemon that just switched in, nothing happens. The move is still usable though, especially with spikes up. Uber Celebi, OU Exeggutor and Meganium, and UU Jumpluff can all make use of it. Leech Seed is good at forcing Pokemon to switch out, and for recovering HP. Late game, it can be very annoying to deal with, especially, again, with spikes up. Spikes help mitigate the switched in Pokemon taking no damage issue. Leech Seed is especially effective against Pokemon with huge HP stats, such as Snorlax. The higher the HP of a Leech Seed inflicted Pokemon, the more HP that's going to be leeched. Light Screen is a nice supporting move. When a Pokemon uses Light Screen, it doubles the special defense of its team for 5 turns. This has numerous applications. Light Screen can be used to help Pokemon set up easier, to help neuter special attackers, or to help Pokemon switch in easier. Bliss uses Light Screen to help beat Pokemon like Vaporeon, and to help its teammates switch in. OU Machamp and UU Scyther use it to help themselves set up against threats they otherwise might struggle with, like Slowbro in Scyther's case. Pokemon like UU Electrode or NU Ledyon and Dragonair use Light Screen almost solely to support their teammates, especially on offensive teams. Lovely Kiss and Sleep Powder are essentially identical. They both put the opponent to sleep, and they have 75% accuracy. In GSC, sleep lasts for 1 to 6 turns. GSC is the only generation where Lovely Kiss isn't just a signature move of Jinx. Several Pokemon have access to it because of New York City Pokemon Center events. Snorlax gets Lovely Kiss, and it can make devastating use of the move. In Ubers especially, Lovely Kiss is very important on Snorlax, and it uses it very often. Jinx of course uses Lovely Kiss to shut down Pokemon without Sleep Talk. Jinx's identity as a strong special attacker that can sleep stuff reliably is a big reason it rose from BL to OU. Nidoking is also good at using Lovely Kiss, though it's used the move less in recent times because of metagame shifts. In UU, Granbull can run Lovely Kiss very effectively, and Nidoqueen used to run the move before the metagame shifts made it less good. All of the members of the Poly line can use Belly Drum and Lovely Kiss. This helped Politoed make Agility Pass teams broken in UU, and it helped turn Poliwhirl into an actual threat in PU. As for Sleep Powder, a lot of the Pokemon who learn it often go without it. It should be noted that sleep moves do struggle in GSC because of how prominent Sleep Talk is. The ones who regularly use Sleep Powder include OU Exeggutor, who uses it to support its team, UU Jumpluff on spikeless teams, and PU Venomoth. These two are the exact same move, only difference is Mean Look has 8 PP and Spiderweb has 16. When a Pokemon uses Mean Look, the opposing Pokemon on the field is permanently prevented from switching out. The most obvious application of this is pairing it with Perish Song, and yeah, that can work. Gengar, Misdreavus, Jinx, and UU Haunter are all capable of using Perish Song plus Mean Look. Mean Look doesn't need Perish Song to work well though. Just the act of preventing a Pokemon from switching out can be very useful. It can be used to force Pokemon to be KO'd. Umbreon can use just Mean Look to surprise trap Pokemon like Snorlax, and then stall it out until it's forced to use Struggle. Also, if you use Mean Look or Spiderweb, and then use Baton Pass, the Pokemon you Baton Pass to will also trap the opposing Pokemon from switching. Umbreon used to run Mean Look plus Baton Pass, and Smeargle Spiderweb Baton Pass until this combination was banned from OU. Ariados also used Spiderweb Baton Pass in NU and PU. It's never made much of an impact in NU, but in PU, Spiderweb Baton Pass was very centralizing, and it ended up getting the combination banned again in PU. Again, just trapping a Pokemon is great, and adding Baton Pass to the equation made it even better. Meditate isn't a terrible boosting move, but few Pokemon learn it, and some of the few who do can't make good use out of it. You're never going to use Meditate Jinx, for example. Machamp might seem like an appealing Meditate user, but it largely prefers Curse because that also boosts defense. UU Mr. Mime can use Meditate, but that's only to Baton Pass it to its teammates. NU is where Meditate has the most luck as a move. Primeape used to frequently use Meditate sets, and they are still usable. Hitmonlee has a lot of potential with a Meditate plus Reversal set. This set can run teams down if used effectively. Megahorn is easily the best bug type attack in the game. Megahorn has an insane 120 base power, at the cost of 85% accuracy. The strongest bug attack after Megahorn is Hidden Power Bug, which is 50 base power weaker. There's a huge issue with Megahorn though. Only a single Pokemon, let alone a bug type, actually learns it. The Pokemon in question is Heracross, and access to Megahorn is a big reason why Heracross is one of the 2 bug types in OU. It tears through Dark, Grass, and Psychic types, and even neutral targets take a ton from it. Snorlax takes over 40% from the move unboosted. When boosted by Curse, Megahorn is even more terrifying. I am linking these 4 moves together because they are mostly the same. Milk Drink and Soft Boiled have 16 PP, while Moonlight and Morning Sun have 8. Morning Sun and Moonlight heal all of a Pokemon's HP if Sunny Day is up, and 1/4 if Rain or Sandstorm is up. All of these moves have the same wonderful effect. They recover a Pokemon's HP by 50%. This is, of course, very useful, especially in a generation where Rest plus Sleep Talk is the dominant form of recovery. Rest and Sleep Talk take up 2 move slots, while these moves only take up 1. You also don't have to deal with the RNG involved with Sleep Talk. Milk Drink is only learned by Miltank, and it uses it to restore half its HP, greatly improving its longevity. Miltank doesn't mind status as much as other non-rest recovery users because it also has Heal Bell. Blissey and Chansey with Soft Boiled are the same deal. They even have Heal Bell too. These Pokemon wouldn't be nearly as effective if they didn't have instant recovery moves. Mew and Ubers can also use Soft Boiled to have more longevity when going up against Pokemon like Mewtwo. All the Pokemon with Moonlight or Morning Sun wish they had a recovery move with more than APP. APP on a recovery move is really meager. Umbreon very rarely uses Moonlight these days because it prefers Rest. Clefable, if that ever shows up, uses Moonlight to heal off its belly drum. Moonlight is an important part of UU Nidoqueen's identity. Moonlight lets us switch into Hidden Power Water using electric types long term, and also, in general, greatly improves its longevity. Moonlight is also important on Sneasel and PU, turning it into an actual check to some truly dangerous Pokemon thanks to its speed. Espeon can use Morning Sun to heal off attacks and switch into Pokemon like Machamp more long term. I'll see you all in part 2.